Manx Radio Podcasts, powered by Shaw.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
One Dental Clinic, sponsors of Women Today, offer convenient appointment times in the heart of Douglas, so you can fit your dental care into your working day.
Fast and my good afternoon. It's 6 minutes past 2. I'm Christy DeHaven, and today we are back on the Conister Rock, where we spend an hour sharing music and memories with some of our best loved island personalities. And I'm joined on the rock today by someone who is as connected to this island as the sea is to the shoreline. She's grown with and through a crucial period of cultural revival, being fortunate to be taken under the wing of poet and folklorist Mona Douglas from a very young age, instilling a lifelong passion for her native language, music and dance. And she continues to play a hugely important part in keeping Manx culture alive, not least in forming, educating and shaping future Manx generations with her work at the Bunschoill Gaelgagh. There is much, much more to Annie Kissack, and we'll be finding out about the many strings to her bow over the course of the next hour. But starting with one of her most recent accomplishments, Annie, you say that becoming the Manx Bard this year was when you realised that you really actually do like writing poetry.
Yes, that doesn't sound particularly sensible, really. But yes, I suddenly thought I can do this. I have been writing, of course, for years. But, you know, when you do things a long time and you keep them quietly to yourself and you think, well, they're amusing me. And actually sort of putting your head above the parapet and think, oh, actually, yeah, people seem to be liking this and encouraging noises off and indeed entering a competition. Yes, it sort of gives you confidence, I suppose. That it seems quite strange. You can wait till you're 59 till you suddenly realise you really like doing something, meaning you really like it and it's worth the effort. But it's still very nice when it happens. Yes.
So what then would be your plans for your, would you call it a bardship, I suppose? What are your plans for this year?
Well, they are evolving as we speak. I mean, personally, I'm determined to keep writing as much as I can. And I have been so far in the last couple of months, at least 3 poems a week. Determined to write about anything that comes into my head. It might get abandoned. Most of it does. I've been looking back at things that I wrote not prolifically when I was a lot younger, dismissing most of them, but, you know, salvaging a line or two and thinking, I can do things with this. So personally, I've sort of set myself a challenge of producing a lot of things to see if I can. I think I can. I've got a lot of words floating around. In terms of doing something for the island, this is not all about you and what you want to do yourself individually. I'm obviously seizing any opportunity for being heard, seen. I obviously have spent a lot of time at various country concerts and things in the past and done an odd poem, but now I can do it in my own right, not just as a sort of add-on to a choral concert. So I'll certainly be doing more of that, and some liaison with Culture Van, and no doubt lots of things, and very open to anybody's bright ideas, of course.
Oh, well, there you go. If
anybody out there
thinks,
oh, just love to write some music to this or whatever. Yes.
Well, I think it's safe to say, isn't it, that, you know, words have been very important to you through your life. And I wonder if you do think that there is a real power in them to sort of convey and sort of protect and also, I don't know, express who we are as a nation.
Yes, for good or bad. And I suppose that's for everybody. Words are probably the most powerful thing we have. It's quite frightening, really, what they can do and how they can do it in negative ways too. As far as I see it, I haven't consciously thought I would like to write about the island. It's just part of being me and my experience. And yes, I don't really go in for the big political sort of things. It doesn't mean I don't have those thoughts, but my way of connecting is perhaps a little bit different. I'm sort of emotionally connected, I suppose, to this place. And the words are a way, in a way, of finding out actually what you really do think. You can actually start writing something without knowing what you think. By the end, you've refined that thought, if you like, if that makes any sense.
It does, it absolutely does. So it's interesting you say you don't sort of see them, you don't see yourself taking them into the sort of political realm. Were you in any way sort of turned off by that from obviously your husband being Phil Gore and MHK, former MHK?
No, I think we all have, most of us share common concerns about things that happen here, and we express them in different ways. And my way is perhaps more a poetic way, a musical way than others may choose to use.
Very diplomatically said
Yes.
there. So I have to say, it's safe to say you are obviously a Manx person. Do you know how far back your Manx roots go?
Well, on the Kissack side, I don't look into these sort of things in a very systematic way, but fortunately, as the Reverend Rex Kissack produced a book on the Kissack family, about the extended Kissack family 20, 30 years ago now, there we are in it. So yes, I do know, because somebody else has done all the work. That's on one side, but all my roots are Manx. I have a Scottish grandmother about whom I knew very little, and I've been finding out about that aspect of the family in the last couple of years, really on behalf of my dad, who didn't know. I found out there are all kinds of opera singers in that side of the family in Scotland, in Glasgow, which was quite interesting to find out about, and found letters from Covent Garden and all sorts of things. So that was an aspect I wasn't expecting. And on a mum's side, her mother's family is from the west of the island and included Manx speakers and even Manx singers, I know, and preachers. But her dad's family were from Liverpool. So, I'm mixed, like most people here. I've got a mixed heritage, but this is my place.
And so going back to sort of that early time with little Annie, shall we say, you grew up in Onchan, didn't you? And you went to Onchan school. You say you were often late for school.
Oh, yes. Yes. I hope my husband is not listening to this and laughing. I'm always accusing him of this now. But yes, I've always seemed to be living as a child adjacent to school fields and adjacent to Onchan school field. I used to you go home at dinner time, at big long dinner times, and the whistle would blow and I'd have to charge through the fence at the back of the house and run the length of the field, which is a big field, Onchan school field. And I'd just get there in time to walk in. And I don't know why I did this sort of delay, because I didn't want to be in trouble, but children do things like that, don't they?
And what were some of your favourite subjects? Because I'm guessing back then there weren't very many sort of Manx related subjects or topics that you were learning.
I wasn't. Certainly the first few years at school I was sort of in remedial readers. I was slow at things. I started school when I was just 4 and I found things very hard, I think. I just accepted that, what it was like. But when I got to about 8, my teacher, I didn't reach the juniors, was Leslie Quilliam from Peel, and of course he was very interested in all the sort of Manx culture, place names, and he started a Manx class at school after school, and I went along. Not many people went, but a few of us did, and straight away I was hooked, fascinated, and ran home. Mum, I know where we live. And she said, well, of course you know where you live. Yes, but I know why it's called Ballacrink Drive. And that got my mum and Dad very interested, actually, and things sort of fanned out from that over the years to my parents got involved in sort of Manx, learning the Manx language. Dad still is. Hello, Dad. I hope you're listening. Fast am I. And we sort of went from there. I got more involved than perhaps most people because I was genuinely fascinated about the things that my parents actually couldn't tell me at that point because they didn't know. They were of that generation that hadn't really been told and were a bit ashamed in some ways of being Manx. That was that sort of era, after the wars, really.
So in some ways you were sort of educating your parents, which maybe that's where your interest in teaching started.
Well, I don't know about that. Yeah.
But we've been choosing some music for this afternoon, which is always a difficult thing for our guests. And I do always say that I would not like to be put in a position where you have to choose 4 or 5 songs and sort of whittle them out of all of the many ones that you might want to choose. And I'm guessing this was particularly hard for you, Annie, with your love of music and also your vast interest in different types of music as well. Was it a difficult thing for you?
Yes, it was, but I have to admit, when I went running around the house looking for the requisite CDs, I realised a lot of things were just floating around in my head. I knew I liked them because I'd heard them so often on radio and in history. I didn't actually have the recordings, and that and certain people who will not put their CDs back in the right case meant that the things I thought I would go to immediately weren't actually always there. So I homed in really on the things the pieces of music that I suppose in a way were iconic for me, not necessarily as pieces of music, but what they represented in my life. So most of my choices have been based around that. So they are, of course, quite solidly on Manx ground.
Well, your first tune then that we're going to hear today, the first piece of music, it is a very rousing piece of music, one that I know very well, the Maddie Pryor piece. Tell us a little bit about why you've chosen this one.
Lots of reasons. He would true valour see. Well, that was of course a hymn, and is a hymn, and I learnt it I think at first when I was at St Peter's Church in Onchan, and my mum used to roar with laughter when it came to the foul fiends, and she always laughed at this, and it was rather well, funny in a way, but we arranged a funeral service a few 2 or 3 years ago, and we had to have that in there. Also had it at our wedding, and it seems to crop up at various key moments. Manx classes, actually. When we went to Manx classes with my mother and father, I was about 9, and I would sit in the background, and Mum and Dad went to Peel to Lewis Crellin, who was a lovely fella, and he used to have Manx classes in the Rechabite Hall, and they'd be telling stories. And one of the works they were looking at was a translation of the first part of the Pilgrim's Progress in Manx. So I came across some of these sort of words and phrases, these John Bunyan things, obliquely in a different way through Manx, which was another nice connection.
Giant fight, but he will have a right to be a pilgrim.
That is Maddie Pryor and the Carnival Band, and that is Who Would True Valour See? And we will have more music choices from Annie Kissack over the course of the next 40 minutes or so. If you want to text, you can do that 166 177, or if you want to send an email for Annie, you can email studio@manxradio.com.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
One Dental Clinic, sponsors of Women Today, offer convenient appointment times in the heart of Douglas, so you can fit your dental care into your working day.
You are listening to Women Today, but today, as it's Friday, we are on the Conister Rock, and I'm delighted to be joined by Annie Kissack. We're having a right old time here, aren't we?
Yes.
It's good fun. It's good fun. Oh, and you mentioned just before the break, you mentioned that you were taught Manx by the teacher Leslie Quilliam, but then you say that began sort of a lifelong involvement with your native language and interest in all of that. But then you had a meeting with someone who was very important to you and also crucial, pardon me, to the sort of health and preservation of our island's culture and heritage, really. And it's one of those names that I remember as a child hearing this name, had no idea how important this woman really was. And so since having found out a lot more about Mona Douglas, when I read that you had quite a strong connection with her, I was so excited, I have to say. Annie, tell us about how you actually met her in the first place.
Well, it was down to Mum and Dad, and it was also down to Leslie Quilliam, the teacher again, who had a word with Mum and Dad and mentioned that he thought I was very interested in, or would be very interested to meet Mona Douglas, because she had what they called a youth group in town at the time. It sounded a bit, youth group in town sounded a bit dodgy, but anyway, I expressed an interest, and my sister Jenny too, and we were brought down basically every Saturday night from I suppose I was about 7 till I was about 17. I'd be going to the back of Mount Havelock, and along with a few other children and youths, and we would be learning Manx songs and some dancing, even fencing at one point. And as I got older, I got sort of dragged into different different aspects of culture, if you like, dialect plays and all sorts of things, which didn't just involve the children of Gaelgagh, but involved other people who were interested both in the sort of preservation of dialect and sort of Manx traditions and also the language. So I ended up coming across an awful lot of very influential people who indeed did influence me very strongly at I suppose a time when I was very open to it all. So I was very lucky. But Mona Douglas was was a sort of constant through my life, really, and still is in various ways.
And we were just saying off air there how, because I mentioned to you that, like I said, I knew of her as a child, had no idea about the importance of her. And you said, well, actually, that was pretty much the case when she was alive as well. Most people just had no idea how crucial the work she was doing was.
Yeah, she was a very determined lady, and she didn't. She saw where she wanted to go, and she appeared to take no notice of the difficulties that everybody else would see. This is the right thing to do. This is what we'll do. And she was sort of out of her time, really. The things she was interested in at the time and promoting and knew about were things that really, I think most people thought had fizzled out before or during the First World War. And they seemed a bit old-fashioned and strange and backward looking, if you like, and Mona had a sort of mystical side to her as well, which I think might have caused huge embarrassment to the practical people of the 20th century. So she was a little bit out on a limb, but she did her own thing, and she kept doing it all her life, and she saw the world in a different way than most people. But I was impressed by the sort of singularity of her vision, and you should do what feels right. And I think I've sort of tried in a way to follow in not exactly her footsteps, because we wouldn't agree on lots of things, but that idea is you should follow what feels right, and your instinct on these things is not a bad way to be.
And it absolutely sort of proves how important those connections are with people, and how you can have, even a brief encounter with someone and it can influence the rest of your life, really. And actually what her work and what you've continued to do since is influencing all of our lives, because you see it around us now, don't you? You can see the effect of it.
I think she would be delighted to see all the interest in Manx culture that's going on at all levels now. It's very respectable, almost too respectable, some might say. But, it's gone from being a sort of very, very small minority to quite a healthy minority now, I think. I don't think she'd have been surprised, though. She thought that everything had its time, I think, and it probably does, yes.
And yeah, as everything had its time, but you described when you sent in your information, you were saying that she did what she did in spite of the indifference and hostility of the times that she was in.
Yes.
So there was quite a backlash, was there?
I think... she didn't always help herself. I think some people were horrified. People would go on record of having seen fairies here, there, and everywhere. It just sort of confounded the images of airy fairy woman once intellectually sort of lacking, ridiculously imaginative, all the things that would be used sometimes against women, actually. I think particularly in the past, not so much these days, but I do feel she was in a way at a disadvantage of being female at a time when most of the movers and shakers in the Manx world, the people who were out researching the Manx language and this sort of thing, were all male, and they were all very I have huge respect for them as individuals, but there's this sort of strange woman on the periphery doing her own thing, which sort of involved songs and things that people didn't perhaps feel were quite as important as they would do now. And she was very creative, and she didn't really see a gap between what you collect and what you find and what you create yourself. So as a folklore collector, she's probably pretty desperately bad, because your own imagination and your own experience went straight into it. But I identify with that very strongly, and I think it's just the mark of being a really creative person in the right environment. So.
And this talk of Mona and that time in your life as well leads us into your next piece of music, which is a beautiful piece. Tell us about The Secret Island.
Yes, Mona was a poet, and I didn't really realise this until perhaps the last 30 years or so, and I've come across some of her writings which have not been published or hadn't been published for a very, very long time. And one of the longer poems known as The Secret Island, and part of this has been beautifully arranged and sung by Marlene, and I think Charles Gard, another great friend of Rona, is playing the harp there, and I think it's a beautiful piece, and it gives it gives the words the beauty that they have in them too. It works very well together.
I know a distant land over the sea, green hill and cloudy strand and windy lea, the white host their banquet keep there, and old Israel is rocked asleep in that far hidden island of seas beyond the world. I know a lonely land where dreams unfold, there down dim lengths of sand, strange tides are rolled from silent seas more deep and vast, where all life is but a foam upcast in that grey secret island of seas beyond the world.
Beautiful piece of music. Marlene Hendy singing there. The words of Mona Douglas.
Yes.
And with Charles Gard playing harp. You can just hear him beautifully in the background there. And that is The Secret Island. I think it's still available on the Best That's In, one of the Best That's In CDs,
Yes.
so you can still get hold of it. Annie Kissack, I want to know, just wrapping up that conversation about these people like Mona Douglas and Dougie Farragher and all the various people that you knew and met with in that sort of quest in a way to bring back the Manx culture to life again. Why do you think it is important to keep that thread to our past?
I don't think I've got a choice, really. I think if you're given something, it's very precious. You need to give it to somebody else.
That's a beautiful answer. Absolutely lovely. So we are joined by Annie Kissack this afternoon, sharing music and memories with her through till 3 p.m. We've got more music coming up in just a moment. You went to university in Wales, didn't you?
Yes,
tell us,
Bangor.
Bangor. What was it like? What was your time like there?
I enjoyed it on the whole. I met up. I think I naively thought I would go to Wales, I would learn Welsh straight away, and I would be involved in anything. I didn't realise that it takes time to learn a language from scratch, and you have to sort of ease your way into a culture. You can't just say, here I am and I want to. So I ended up really running around with meeting two very good friends who weren't from Wales, who were in Northern Ireland and Cornwall, who we're still very close with. So we were like the Celtic fringe, I suppose. But no, I enjoyed it. I did English there, ironically, and I enjoyed coming back. So yes, it was.
And were you
good.
inspired by it? Because obviously they've got a long history really in sort of trying to preserve their native language and their traditions. Did that inspire you in any way?
It was a heady time. There were lots of protests and things going on, and inevitably, as a non-Welsh speaker, I suppose I was the other part, which is interesting to see yourself in that position when you don't anticipate it. So yes, the tenacity of fighting for something you really believe in. It was, it was sort of palpable and great, and I could understand it absolutely. But I didn't come back, a fluent Welsh speaker at all. Yes, I've had more contact with Welsh speakers and things in later life through connections with the Cronach and going to the Eisteddfods and things. So
because that's the thing we do
yes,
all, from these nations.
Yes,
we
yes.
have that
It's a beautiful,
undoubtedly, don't we?
Yeah. It's a beautiful language, actually. If I was linguistically able, and I'm not really, I can do Manx and an awful lot of English, but it would be Welsh would be the the language I would like to be able to speak fluently for the sound of it.
It is very musical, isn't
Yes,
it? And that's,
yes.
do you know what? That links us in nicely to our next little section, because as I said, there's so many strings to your bow, Annie Kissack, there really are. And one of them, of course, as you describe yourself as an enthusiastic composer, which I love. And you do, of course, direct the a cappella Manx language choir, Caarjyn Cooidjagh, as well. Just tell us how all that came about.
Oh, it was a long, long time ago, and Crinicht in Ramsey were having competitions, and there were choir competitions, and at the time my good friend Claire Kilgallen was singing in the choir Cloggery Tui, and I think they'd only been going a couple of years at that point, and I thought, well, maybe we could myself and my friend Julie Matthews, maybe we could get a small group together and sing something. Maybe could do it in harmony. I'd not done that before ever, but we got about 4 or 5 of us together, and I tried to scribble out some ideas, but I didn't really feel I knew I didn't really know what I was doing. But anyway, they were fortunate. Julie was a wonderful musician and could hold an alto line, and we acquired a few people who could sing bits of harmony, and I thought, oh, I quite like this. So basically it sort of grew from there. We gained people. We realised we sounded quite nice. We gave up every Saturday night then for the next, well, till now. We practice every Saturday night without fail, really. And it's sort of given up on that idea of an alternative social life to have a choir social life. And yeah, we're all quite a bit older now, but, you know, we acquire some younger people en route. And well, I've been very lucky. People are willing to sing what I write mostly, and it's quite a good incentive for writing and arranging more. Yes,
I can imagine it is. And you've chosen a piece. Which is the piece we're going to hear?
Yes, we're going to hear Carvel Crenesh, which is the name of a CD we brought out, but was also the name of the track on the CD, which is a Cregnish carol. It's a very simple piece that I made for the choir quite a few years ago, and it came out of at the time I was living at Cregnish. I was married to Phil at that point, and we had the 2 children there. Ewan and Kitty were brought up there, and it was a beautiful place to live in, and a lovely clear night towards Christmas. And I suppose you could say I sort of had an imaginary vision of angels, if you like, or maybe it wasn't imaginary, I don't know. Anyway, it resulted in Carvel Crenesh, and my friend Aileen Clegg, who I teach with now, sings a solo on this, and it's lovely to hear Aileen's voice in any context.
Beautiful. Caarjyn Cooidjagh. I'm going to let you pronounce the name of the piece again, Annie.
It's Caarjyn Cooidjagh.
Caarjyn Cooidjagh.
That's
Okay, and that was from a time when you lived at Cregneash. And just off mic there, I was just saying, did you live in any of the sort of real historical buildings? And actually lived in a couple there, didn't you?
Well, we lived in 3. We moved around, and that seems to be in the way of people who lived in Cregneash historically as well. They went around different houses. No, we started off our married life in the weavers' house, tie a feather next to the weaver's shed there, and that's where Ewan was born. And then we went to Coolbairn over with the pink roses next to the church. That's where Kitty was born, and we then moved up next, Ty Vadderall, which was the house where Ned Madderall, the last native speaker, had learned the Manx from his grandmother. That's where we finished off in Cregneash there. So it was a lovely time. And
Lovely
nice
time.
for the children.
And did you feel like it sort
there.
of deepened your connection then to that Manx heritage being there?
Yes, we got to know about the native speakers, and of course Stanley Carron was around telling us about his family, and very friendly and open about these things. Oh yes, it did deepen things and gave it a different perspective. It wasn't all academic; it was still connected with the people who were round and about us at the time.
Absolutely. Well, Annie's going to be with us for a little bit longer, about another 20 minutes or so, and we've still got some more music to play. Very excited to play these final 2 pieces. That's all coming up after the break, but it's now 20 minutes to 3.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Abbey Dental, sponsors of Women Today, for all aspects of today's dental care. Highly recommended throughout the Isle of Man.
And it's just coming up to 2:45 on the programme. Now, just before the break, talking to Annie Kissack there. And Annie, we played some Caarjyn Cooidjagh, and I wanted to quote something at you, which I think is just really lovely. When you're talking about the choir to me, you say, the real achievement is some wonderful friends. Otherwise, there would be no point in writing music.
Yes, that's absolutely true. Yes, indeed. I would. There'd be no point, and I wouldn't do it. And I probably wouldn't write poems either when it comes to that, because there'd be nobody saying, "I think that's all right" in your ear.
Which again is all about that sort of connection, isn't it, with other people,
Yes,
which leads into the whole nature of how important community is, I suppose.
Yes, and people give you confidence. I'm not naturally a confident person. This might have come over, and having people who will say, yes, go for it, has made such a difference in my life. So yeah, all praise to them.
And we did hear the solo from Aileen there, and you've been writing with Aileen for quite some time, haven't you? And you write Manx songs for the children.
Oh, we have a ball about every we have at the Bunschoill Gaelgagh, we have a big musical play, if you like, a musical every summer term now, and there's a sort of grown from being about 3/4 of an hour long to being about an hour and a half, full scale musical. I write the first half, she writes the second half, and we write about a dozen songs each in the space of about 3 weeks, and it's such a pressure, but it's manic, it's fun, it's good. The children have loads of fun doing it. I think they all think everybody makes up songs as well, so they're quite happy to make things up. And no, it's really nice to have a collaborative partnership on something like that too.
Gosh, you're so prolific though. That's such a huge amount of
nervous
songs.
Energy. Got to do something with it.
And these children then that you are sort of working with, do you think that the Manx culture is safe in their hands then for the future?
I certainly hope so. There's enough of them gone through the system such as we have at the moment to make that very likely, I hope. And I hope they'll do it because they want to and think there's something intrinsically worthwhile in it, and it wasn't just we went to that odd school because our parents made us. And there will be some people who think that in the end, but you know, if you have a handful of people who think something's really worthwhile, it's always going to be all right.
That's very true. And I do sort of think back now, thinking about talking about Mona and the other people with Dougie and Dick Radcliffe and Adrian Pilgrim that you mentioned have since passed away, what they would make of the fact that, you know, now we have these Manx speaking children, just like we were talking about Hoptunay and how so many of them round Peel were singing in Manx.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Yes, it would be an interesting thought to see how they reacted, but I think they'd be very, very pleased.
And we were talking a bit about your family and the fact that both Ewan and Kitty were born in Cregnish, which I just think is magic. That's just so perfect.
Yes, it's a lovely place to be
Yeah,
brought
what
up.
a lovely thing. And obviously a lot of people will know Ewan's voice because he is our local democracy
Yes,
reporter.
indeed.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. He's done very well for himself. Interestingly, though, I wasn't aware that Kitty, your daughter, has been sort of homebound, hasn't she, for some time?
Yes, nearly 10 years now, unfortunately. She has ME, that means that really she can hardly get out of the house very much at all, and there's all kinds of quite unpleasant things to deal with, but she's still got a lot of spirit and she knows what she wants to do. She'd like to have gone to music somewhere and could have done, I think, and play the piano. So maybe, in the future they'll find something to help with that, and she can sort of get back doing things like she probably would really be able to do, I think.
It is one of those really frustrating conditions, isn't it? Because so little is really understood about it.
Yes, it was one of the hardest lessons in my life to realise of just wanting something to work out, and you can't make it, and you can't make it right for everybody. You can't, which is really hard as a parent to realise that some things you can't admit. You can do some things, but you cannot, change certain things just by sort of force of wishing to. And, really, I think, well, I need to go on and do the things I can do because I'm fortunate enough at the moment to be well, and we should all be doing that. While we've got our health, we should be doing what you can do and being glad for your health. Yeah.
Well said indeed. So you've done so much, as we've talked about over the past hour, and there's so much more we could have talked about as well. What would you say you're most proud of to this point then?
I suppose I'm going to be very boring and say I'm very proud of my family because we're still friends with each other, and we do our own things and we go our own way. But I think we all respect what each other has done and does now. And it's a bit boring saying that, isn't it? But
Not
I
at
think
all.
I think that's a fairly major achievement.
Which is a lovely thing that you put on your information when you sent through, and we ask what people love. You could give us any sort of answer, and you said having a happy family and a sunny day picking blackberries.
Yes,
which it sort of sums it
good.
up. Yes, yeah. It's so true. Again, that connection to the land where you live, which is clearly very important. And I also love the fact that you said you love the masses of kind people in the world because you're always meeting them. That is such an encouraging thing to hear, Annie Kissack.
Yes, it does sound rather pious, doesn't it? But it was quite genuine. I do. I think most people are very, very nice if you get time to know them and listen to them. Yeah.
Well said indeed. What are your ambitions then for the future? Because I would imagine you have many grand plans considering what you've achieved so far, Annie.
I'm not a person who plans anything. In fact, I'm like the antithesis of plans. Instinct, I just go for what feels right. So I've never planned anything. I don't seek things, but I always find things that come my way. So that's how I intend to carry on and see how I feel and see what lands in my lap, and that's the way I'll go.
And we have had some wonderful pieces of music. We do need to round up. You did also choose the Manx Fisherman's Hymn by the Regal Singers, which unfortunately we're not going to have time for, but we're conscious that a lot of people know that one.
Yes.
So we've chosen instead one that I would imagine most of our listeners will not know, but it is wonderful. Tell us what we're going to finish with today, Annie.
Right, well, my wild card is something I heard on the radio a couple of years ago, and I found the CD off, and it's so Latin American baroque, if you like, the sort of native Indian culture meeting the sort of Latin culture and a sort of resulting music that comes out of this. So this is a wonderful piece of music, and the words, which I've just found here, are involving say. Hey, come on, play, sing and dance.
Oh, that is perfect.
Perfect. And I want to dance when I hear this. So, yes.
Well, maybe
So
we'll dance around the room when the mics are off, and I'll stop the videos recording as well. Yes, we'll do that. And it's been an absolute joy spending this time with you. Thank you so much.
Guramai Murat.
Guramai. If you missed any part of this programme, you can go back and listen again via the on-demand feature, and we will have a little video clip on the portal. It will not be of us dancing, but we will. Well, if you want to, we can. We can do that as well.
People will be very disappointed.
I think not. Annie Kissack, thank you and goodbye.
I am
sit in the slow lane. Join the fast lane right now with Shaw's all-new Superfast Plus broadband. Enjoy more bandwidth, amazing speeds and the best value on the island from just £23.95 per month. So don't be left behind. Get a piece of the high-speed action with Superfast Plus broadband from Shaw. For details, visit our stores in Douglas, Ramsey and Port Erin or click shaw.com.
Love being Shaw.
Terms and conditions apply.